Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Thursday, October 15th, and I'm Blair Kerbow. Today, we talk Missouri and the SEC with beat writer Souichi Terada. It's been a newsworthy week in the conference with COVID-19 outbreaks impacting games. The Tigers were supposed to play against Vanderbilt this weekend. That's not happening. It's one of two SEC games on Saturday to be scrapped. And it looks like Alabama coach Nick Saban will miss this weekend's game against Georgia after contracting the virus. We also take a look back at Missouri's big victory over LSU last weekend and take a sneak peek at the basketball season with practices opening up across Division I this week. After a break, you'll hear a short interview I had with Kansas City Mayor Quinton and Sports Commission President Kathy Nelson. They were glowing after learning Kansas City had landed future NCAA championships in men's basketball, wrestling, and volleyball. So here we go, talking Missouri sports. Souichi Terada covers the Missouri Tigers for the Star, and as we're talking, if you hear a keyboard in the background, that is Souichi writing about what's going on in the SEC this week, and a lot. When it comes to the news of the pandemic, the COVID-19 world, it has affected Missouri directly because the Tigers were supposed to play Vanderbilt on Saturday in Columbia, right? That was a home game for the Tigers. Mm-hmm. And that's not happening because of issues with Vanderbilt's program. One of two SEC games that's not going to be played this weekend. LSU-Florida off because of the issues with COVID-19, and now we know that Alabama coach Nick Saban has contracted the virus and will not be on the sidelines for Alabama's big game against Georgia on Saturday. Have I covered it all, or are there more COVID-19 issues in the SEC this week?
Blair, believe it or not, I believe you have not. Lane Kiffin actually said yesterday, reportedly, that the Rebels are dealing with some COVID-19 issues. They should be good to play. I think a third SEC game postponed within a week might be a little rough for the conference. But yeah, you covered pretty much all of it. I was kind of preparing for a Commodores team that wasn't looking too hot, and Mizzou was looking at potentially stringing together a winning streak. And obviously that is no longer the case, where I am now enjoying a bye week, as will the rest of the Missouri Tigers. A drink was said on Tuesday that he will be recruiting throughout the week, so that should be some fun. Maybe he'll go to the pumpkin patch as the leaves turn a little golden colored here in Columbia. But yeah, Blair, I mean, you kind of summed it up in the sense that the conference has had to deal with a lot, and my impression actually through the first opening 3 weeks is that travel has kind of been a struggle. Drink was mentioned last week after the Tennessee game that Mizzou had to essentially contact trace one positive, knocking out, 6 players. That's essentially what happened here. With travel, that's just a difficult thing just because, one, with your travel party, those are pretty much only the guys who are going to play. Like they're on the travel roster for a reason. And two, contact tracing. I mean, when you're sitting on a plane and you try to socially distance on a plane, but if somebody tests positive for COVID, then obviously contact tracing is an issue. So that's kind of the thing that kind of struck me, just especially with Florida, just because reportedly some players had been exhibiting, allergy, COVID-like symptoms, and they didn't report it. And they essentially decided to go and on a road trip to Texas A&M last weekend. And the next thing you know, contact tracing wipes out a big part of Florida's team. So it seems like travel is one of those things where, yeah, sure, you're not playing in front of a packed home crowd opponent, but with contact tracing and what we know about COVID, that's just one of the many barriers that you have to kind of travel. So I'm glad you summed it up, though, just because there has just been so much going on the SEC, and hopefully there isn't more breaking news Thursday, Friday, and the conference can have somewhat of a normal weekend, though. There will be, I'm assuming, more postponements in our near future.
So what happens to the Mizzou Vandy game and LSU Florida?
Yeah, so tentatively they are scheduled for December 12th. So the SEC, luckily, unlike the NFL and their very strict schedule, is that they essentially built in 2 open weeks throughout the season. And so the first one is more of a traditional mid-season bye week where you can kind of, lick your wounds a little bit, get healthy, especially with COVID and injuries now. And then you have the December 12th weekend, which is actually the week before the SEC championship game, So there is some flexibility there. And I say tentative just because we spoke to Jim Sturk on, man, my days are kind of jumbling together, but I believe it was Monday now. We spoke to Jim, and he essentially said that December 19th is actually a weekend that the SEC considers as another potential open week if you're not playing for the conference championship. And so, you know, Mizzou Vanderbilt probably is not, no offense to Mizzou fans or Vanderbilt fans, but that's probably not having any direct impact on the SEC championship game. So we can probably see some, some juggling. And I think I saw on Twitter some, just logistical, hey, if we move, Mizzou Vandy to this certain weekend, maybe we could squeeze in Mizzou Florida if Florida is in the SEC championship game. So that's why everything is still tentative, just because we don't know what's going to happen. And obviously Vanderbilt had his own COVID issues. They played with 56 scholarship players against South Carolina last weekend. Obviously the the minimum SEC scholarship player minimum is 53 players, so they were right up against that kind of a threshold. And then after Sunday's round of testing, they essentially went under, and that's why we had such quick movement, just because they were, to start off, they were so up against that threshold, and then they dipped under after just one round of testing. And obviously the SEC goes through 3 rounds of testing each week. So yeah, to answer your question though, December 12th tentatively, but who knows if that changes, just because you never know with COVID and what other teams are dealing with.
Yeah, it's like a news story every day breaks with the SEC this week in terms of the pandemic and rescheduling. It's just a difficult time for the league office, for the schools, and we saw fans in the stands. Missouri's had fans in the stands. This doesn't have to be the teams really, but just the optics, the image. There are a lot of fans in the stands at the Florida Texas A&M game in College Station last week. And was it Dan Mullen who said he wanted a packed stadium at the Swamp for
90,000 strong
for LSU? I mean, not. I don't know if he backed off that this week, but probably not the right sentiment to express these days when COVID is still spiking upward. And but it is what it is. Which I've heard a lot these days.
Well, Blair, the entire state of Florida is apparently allowing the fans into the stadiums, whether that or the Dolphins or the Jaguars. So that's kind of I know the NFL has kind of backed away from that, but I think that kind of shows you maybe that Florida continues this on brandness, I guess, as some people would, as Vahe texted me the other day.
That's right. Well, so poor LSU, they've got 2 weeks to think about a tough loss in Columbia, but the Tigers have 2 weeks to think about what a great win they had, and it really, really was a fantastic victory. The first for Eli Drinkwitz in wearing the Missouri polo shirt, and to cap it off the way they did with a goal line stand, and not just a not just a goal line stand. That's sometimes when you see teams execute those. A penalty's involved, maybe pushes the team back 5 or 15 yards or something. LSU had 4 shots from the one and did not get in the end zone. And that was just you wrote a story about it where you broke it down with using film. I thought that was really interesting. But what's the aftermath of the triumph, and what does it say about Mizzou and Drinkwitz and the path that they're on?
Yeah, you know what, Blair, when we spoke to Eli on Tuesday, I think he was just as impressed Saturday as he was, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday on that goal line stand. And, it's funny because now with no upcoming game on Saturday, I really broke down that LSU game a little bit more in my free time. And Terrence Marshall, actually, who absolutely torched the Mizzou secondary, 11 receptions for 1 billion yards and 3 touchdowns. He actually, kind of did a goodbye gesture wave thing, similar to Damian Lillard against OKC to Mizzou cornerback Adam Sparks. And then fortunately for Mizzou fans, they actually got the last laugh on that goal line stand. And yeah, in breaking that down, I think the biggest thing was just that Mizzou really controlled the line of scrimmage against LSU. And I think that physicality aspect really shined, at the last moment. I mean, they were able to, Mizzou and LSU had no problems throwing the ball through the air, but it was only Mizzou who was able to, run the ball consistently all game, and that was courtesy of Larry Roundtree and Tyler Beatty. And LSU, I keep saying this, but I just think it's shocking. LSU had 1 rushing yard at halftime against the Mizzou defensive front that was missing 3 of its 4 top defensive tackles because of COVID and injuries. And then you consider that they were pretty awful against that Tennessee run attack the Saturday before. So all of these reasons kind of made it so that Mizzou should have been absolutely torched on the ground, and for LSU just couldn't get anything going through the run game. And I think that's just a sentiment of Mizzou being able to be more physically imposing on both sides of the ball. And I think it was kind of epitomized on that goal line stand, just because LSU tried to run it a couple of times, it didn't work. Then you can go 479 total yards, but if you can't get that last one, then you lose the game, and that's what ended up happening. And that was courtesy of Nick Bolton and Joshua Bledsoe, both making big plays. I think big picture wise, this is, and I don't want to tease, I guess I'll tease my story that I have planning on going up tomorrow, but it really does kind of show the results that Eli Drinkwitz has kind of been, just selling, because it really has been hope the past few months in just terms of, and Drinkwitz has done a great job off the field, whether that was, social justice issues, recruiting, gaining the team's trust. He's done all of that great. But once it comes to football and Saturdays, you really have to be able to pull out wins. And I think pretty much everybody around the nation expected a 0-3 start with that gauntlet of a schedule between Bama, Tennessee, and LSU. But the fact that Drinkwitz and Mizzou was able to pull out a win, seemingly out of nowhere, and really they looked like the better team Saturday. This wasn't the case of the underdog, the scrappy underdog, getting 3 turnovers and really capitalizing on those. It was the complete other way around. I think Mizzou absolutely outplayed LSU. LSU was fortunate to get 3 turnovers, and credit to them for getting 5 fumbles or forcing 5 fumbles and recovering 3 of them. But this was Mizzou shooting itself in the foot over and over again, and they were resilient enough to pull off the win. So I think this just points to. It's still early, but I think it points to maybe Jim Sturck making a good hire, and everything we've heard off the field about this guy Eli Drinkwitz has kind of been maybe solidified a little bit once the results start to come in. So I really, I think I projected a 4-win season. I'm not sure I want to budge off that too much, just because I was maybe a little on the easier side. But 4 to 5 wins in his first year in his SEC schedule would be incredible, and I think Mizzou is well on its way to doing so.
And probably a bowl game, if we have them, and we'll see what presents itself when we get to December. But I think if Mizzou gets to that threshold, 4 or 5 wins, we're probably looking at postseason for the Tigers. And just a couple of postscripts from the LSU game that I learned from reading your stuff. LSU, I think, 1 of 12 on 3rd and 4th down conversions, which is terrific for the Tiger defense, and no points for LSU after the, late in the 3rd quarter was their final touchdown. So when it mattered the most, Missouri's defense, stepped up. It doesn't look that way when you see the final score, 45-41, but when it mattered the most, there were the Missouri Tigers playing its best ball of the afternoon. So,
yeah, I just want to say, I wrote this too, but that defense, it gave up 41 points, but context was really necessary, I think, in that. I mean, there were essentially 24 points off turnovers where the defense got the ball in terrible field position. I mean, those 3 fumbles directly led to 17 points, and then you add the fake punt didn't work, so LSU got the ball essentially at midfield, and they scored a few plays later. So that's 24 points. I don't think the defense is going to come out and say, yeah, we played great, because they still gave up those points, and there were still some, issues with that. Miles Brennan and Terrence Marshall look really good out there, and the secondary, I think got maybe a little humbled a bit just through the air. But yeah, I mean, I think I gave them a C+ in the grades. Maybe should have been a B-. I was kind of debating between those two, but they played well. But I think they can play better. But 41 points doesn't look great. But once you put a little bit of context behind it, I think you walk away from that game, if you're the defense, feeling a lot better about it.
And we spent all this time talking about the game and haven't mentioned Connor Bazelak. What a terrific performance! I think he was he SEC freshman? Was it freshman of the week or newcomer? I don't know what they call it.
Freshman of the week. Yep.
Yeah. What a terrific performance by him.
Yeah, I mean, just where do you start with the redshirt freshman in his second career start? It really was pretty incredible, his performance. I mean, throwing for 406 yards, 4 touchdowns. He looked very poised. There were a few throws. I mean, that back shoulder throw to, I believe, Deontay Booth Smith was incredible. And You know what, Blair? I think it's crazy. I mentioned the defensive tackles in COVID, but I haven't mentioned the wide receivers in COVID in the sense that they were missing their two, starting wide receivers, Damon Hazelton and Kiki Chisholm. Those are the two grad transfers who essentially were going to be the guys on offense. And yeah, they've struggled bits and pieces in the first two games, but what that does to your game plan, I'm sure Drinkwitz will say it doesn't do much, but at the back of your mind when you're missing two starters like that, it's absolutely going to affect things. And Connor Bazelak, I mean, he did not miss a beat. I think we saw a lot of creativity, and I actually texted our Chiefs writer Herbie Teope for an assist because there was a shovel pass essentially to the tight end that was very, very Andy Reid-esque. So I texted him the play, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember this from a recent Chiefs game?" And he, within like 5 minutes, he texted me a Titans Chiefs game from last year about essentially the same play, similar to Travis Kelce. And Nico Hay was a Mizzou's recipient of the pass. But yeah, I mean, we just saw a lot of creativity out of that offense. I think when you're talking, when we're speaking football, yeah, you can be as innovative as possible. But when I think we're talking Eli Drinkwitz and his play calling and his, I guess, offensive guru-ness, you're really going to talk about that creativeness, but also aggressiveness. And we really saw that, fourth play was a flea flicker. The first play of the game, was in a two quarterback set just to kind of confuse the LSU defense. So we saw a lot out of Eli Drinkwitz, but we also saw a lot of, Connor Bazelak and really what a performance. Eli mentioned that Bazelak was essentially getting the lion's share of second team reps throughout camp. And that really paid off just with the chemistry between guys like Toski Dove, Deontay Boo-Smith, Michael Wilson, former quarterback, and those guys. And once you mix in a little Jalen Knox, Beatty, and Roundtree, and next thing you know, you got 45 points up on the board against the reigning national champs.
Not too shabby. Hey, Souichi, let's switch sports because men's basketball practice, well, I guess basketball practice for men and women, started this week officially. And I know Conzo Martin had a little, was it a Zoom gathering on media gathering this week? And you wrote that that the Tigers have maybe a little bit of an advantage this year when it comes to practicing and preparing for a season in this unusual circumstance, and that is about the entire team's coming back. And that is quite an edge. Now it's a lot of experience and age from a team that went 15-16 last year, but they were playing better at the end of the season. And I do think that Mizzou should be in better shape heading into the 2021 season than it was last year. So what were the high points that came out of media day with Conzo Martin and the basketball team?
Yeah, Conzo made a great point in that you can be an experienced team and bring back a lot of juniors and seniors, but you actually have to be battle tested, and I think he made a great point. Mizzou really is that kind of hardened veteran team just because of what they've had to kind of go through the past couple seasons under Martin in the sense of injuries, And I really think that's a good parallel to COVID, not in the sense, obviously COVID is, has killed 200,000 people in this country and counting, but, with injuries and COVID, you never really know when a player can go down out of the blue. And that's kind of what Mizzou has had to deal with. Jeremiah Tillman went down, right at the start of SEC play last season. And next thing you know, you don't have your offensive focal point. And obviously you had the Porter brothers and Conzo Martin's first 2 years at Mizzou. So, this Mizzou team, one, it has a ton of depth, but two, it knows how to just adjust on the fly if you're missing a guy for 2 weeks, because of COVID. So I think that was a great point. Blair, I'm a big subscriber of a college basketball player's best season being your senior season for a number of reasons, whether that be you've been on campus for 4 years as kind of the comfort of going into it and knowing this is your final season, though obviously the NCAA approved the blanket waiver for winter sports athletes, so this extremely old Mizzou team can be even older next year if they so choose. It's still too early for that, but yeah, Mizzou fans might be seeing a whole nother year of these guys. Once again, still too early, but yeah, I mean, I'm really curious how this team shakes out. By all accounts, Jeremiah Tillman has been, he's in better shape. He's kind of had this renewed mindset, especially coming off of injury last year. And he's talked about that and just being a leader more. And you got guys like Drew Smith and Mark Smith and Xavier Pinson who really turned it down, who really turned it on during the second half of the season. There are a lot of narrative points that you can kind of point at and be like, this is kind of an interesting team. Who knows how good they will be? I think, last year, maybe a lot of frustrations with Mizzou fans was that Mizzou just didn't look great on the road. And I think a lot of it, honestly, was just the fact that they still were a relatively young team, even though they brought back a lot of returners. When you only had one senior, Reed Nico, who obviously graduated, but the core of your team was still juniors, and that kind of had maybe its own set of issues, and you were relying on an underclassman down the stretch a lot, and Xavier Pinson. And I think there was kind of this struggle to finish games, especially on the road, and there were kind of these mental lapses for a few minutes. 5 to 10 minutes per. My joke last year was Mizzou looked great for 30 minutes of the game, but those 10 minutes was really when they couldn't execute, and they kind of lost in the game. So I think with the senior-led team, a lot of those issues, hypothetically, I guess, should go away. And if they are able to take care of business in this very weird pandemic season, I think you're looking at competing for an NCAA tournament spot for the first time or for the second time in Conzo Martin's 4 years. So there's a lot to be excited about. I think. Not including the border war, which obviously will not, unfortunately, be happening this season. But I think there are some things to kind of keep in mind and pay attention to this year for Mizzou basketball.
Okay, and we'll get into it in a bigger way in later shows as we approach the beginning of men's college basketball season. We're going to leave this conversation with Souichi Terada, but we're going to hear from Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz here in a moment. I thought this was an interesting comment that he made after the game when pressed a little bit about what the sort of the trials and tribulations the program has gone through and what the victory over LSU meant to him and the program. And then we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to hear from Kansas City Mayor Quinton Jackson and Kansas City Sports Commission President Kathy Nelson, who met the media yesterday and talked about the city of Kansas City landing future men's basketball regional final, Midwest Regional Final in 2023, the NCAA Wrestling Championships in 2024. The University of Missouri will be the host institution for that event, and then the NCAA Volleyball Championship in 2025. So a good day for Kansas City sports, and I got to talk with the mayor and the sports commission president about that. So Souichi, great talking to you, great catching up, and we will do it again soon.
All right, thanks, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Can we talk about this as a shot in the arm for both you guys? Just a shot in the arm for Kansas City over we haven't had anything announcement quite like this since the Big 12 tournament this year, and just what a good day it is.
Yeah, I mean, it shows a few things. One, there is this question of when do we get back to normal? And although maybe there's never a normal, we get to see what our rebound looks like. And we get to see that Kansas City will continue to excel. This is not a time for Kansas City to take a step back. And I think what you're seeing from the interest from the NCAA, what you're seeing really from broad-based sports and tourism interest, is that Kansas City is still well-positioned with our facilities, with our hotels, to be the sort of place that's welcoming folks well and safely as we get back to what the next phase of our country looks like.
A little bit of a blessing that, the first thing is 2023 and not 2021.
Yes. So we have a couple championships in 21. We're hosting women's national bowling. Divisions 1, 2, and 3 will be here. And we have men's regional golf, but not big attendance. So for us, absolutely, 2023 is a huge success. And then consecutive years, I didn't see that coming, so that was a big, big win.
Right, so rattle off 2023 regional final, Midwest regional final.
Yeah, Midwest regionals.
And then a month later, NFL draft.
Oh yeah, there's that. Yes.
Just a little thing called the draft.
We got that. And then 24, we'll have wrestling in March, which would follow Big 12. And then 26 in December, we'll have volleyball. And then hopefully volleyball follows World Cup.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And it also about the timing. Airport, streetcar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like, all right, let's have this for this year.
I think when you're looking at the way things are lining up, 2023 can be one of those amazing years that people talk about in Kansas City. And the way you hear them talk about 1976 and the Republican Convention, the way they talk about the NCAA Final Four in 1988, I think when you look at the number of things going on, it's going to be hard to beat it. And hopefully, though, as Kathy notes, 2026 gives us more excitement, more energy. I also want to note that I love the fact that in a region where we have outstanding college wrestling in these parts, outstanding college volleyball, outstanding college basketball, it's really great to, I think, be seen as a mecca for all of those events, and I expect it to be that way for years to come.
Let's talk about wrestling for a second because
don't make me cry. We worked on that so hard.
Well, that's right. I mean, basketball has been here for many years, and this will be the third volleyball, but only the second wrestling and the first one since 2003. And I know you guys have tried really hard to get wrestling here.
Yeah, the last two bid cycles, of course, we really want wrestling. We know we're a hub for that. We know it'll be successful here. It comes with a massive fan fest where you can't get a ticket. Last time when we didn't get it, we were on the edge, which is exciting and frustrating. And then we're told, your airport's not great. So that, that shot in the arm of a new airport really helped pull us over, I think, this time.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much. Good to see you always.
Thank you, guys.
I still want to give you credit. Nobody ever quotes me for this, but I still give her credit for all the AFC Championship games that we've gotten. The ones in the future, I just say, hey, she's got that too. So,
Yeah, I'll let you know how that played out. I'll take credit.
Good to see you. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, you guys.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Souichi Terada for stopping by and talking Mizzou sports. Links to his stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we have another deal for you, especially for those who want a deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get that? Go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage that comes with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. If you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email at bkirkhoff@kcstar.com and we'll get you to the right place. Whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Friday with another episode.